Hello everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. If it's the first time you've attended one of these, I normally do them every Friday at 2:30 my time here in the UK, just as the US stock markets are opening. We had the payrolls, the unemployment numbers, about an hour ago. This is the S&P 10-minute chart, so you can see the reaction there. So the market liked the payrolls. I think the expectation was for 200,000 jobs, and it came in, was it 220 something like that? So slightly above expectations. So that was positive for stock markets, continuing the trend that, of course, we've seen all week. That's the NASDAQ. Just seeing this market continue to push higher. Dollar index was under some pressure. Had a quick trade down to the lows for the last 3 weeks or so. So yeah, let's have a look. So it's been, I don't want to say a boring week this week. I've not done much trading this week. I came into it long the NASDAQ anyway and long the FTSE. So that's done all right because the NASDAQ, I came out of it yesterday, but the NASDAQ has just gone up. Where's Monday? Here we go, here's Monday. So the NASDAQ started the week around 20,900 and it's about 500 points higher at the end of the week, so that's been good. The trend continues. Same for the S&P, of course, that's just been up all week. There hasn't been much in the way of decent sellbacks for me to jump on, but maybe there will be this afternoon if there's a bit of volatility. I did buy the Dow on Monday. That's been a bit boring, to be honest. There's the Dow. That's been sideways for a lot of this week, so that's been a bit of a dull one. But the NASDAQ trade's done all right. The Bund, I've been in this Bund trade for since down here, 20th of November or something. The European bond, so that's done okay. Yeah, but we'll have a look as we're going through. So what we'll do today, as usual, we'll have a quick look at the major announcements for next week. Then we will jump back on, have a look at the markets, the major markets, indices, FX, gold, oil, Bitcoin, all the usual stuff. And then if there's any stuff that you want looking at it, if you put it into the chat on YouTube while it's all live now, and we'll take a look at that. Okay, let's get started. So let's get a bit of housekeeping out of the way first of all. This presentation is only for educational purposes. It does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones accepts no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. You should consider whether you understand how spread bets, CFDs, futures, foreign exchange work, and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. Trading is risky. Okay. Right, next week. I did this webinar about a week and a half ago, talking about the approach that I use for my day trading. I did it for people who are clients of the broker that I recommend and or in the WhatsApp group. It's what I use for my trades on US indices, day trading setups, where to play stops, when to take profits, the low risk, high reward approach, when not to trade, and what's right for you, position trading, longer term trading or short term trading. If you'd like access to the recording of that, it's about 50 minutes long. I'll give you details a bit later on during today as to how to get access to that. And I'll be doing another one before Christmas. And I'll also give details how you access that as well. Okay, that's that. So next week, it's a big week for inflation next week. Oh, Friday. I didn't update Friday's thing. Ignore Friday. That's me not deleting it from last week's presentation. So Monday, we've got Chinese inflation data. Wednesday, we've got US inflation data. Thursday, we've got the EU interest rate. So it's a bit of a quieter week next week than this week. Of course, we had the non-farm payrolls today. But for me, that is going to be the big one. So US inflation. I mean, clearly, inflation is still quite closely watched. It's obviously a lot lower than it was 18 months ago. But there are some thinking that we might get a second surge of inflation. Let's see what happens. So that Wednesday, US data will be interesting, I think. For me, that's the big one to watch next week. Right, let's get into it. Let's get into the markets. Let's just start off as usual with the S&P 500, the broader US stock market index. I've got my little trades. This is a real account that I use for the live streams. We've done a few trades on this over the last couple of weeks. We did silver last week. There's a euro US dollar trade in there. That's done all right, that one. And there's a S&P trade in there as well. So there's a few little trades in there. If there's anything interesting today, we could always put a trade on, see how it works out. But it's the same old for stock markets, isn't it? I don't know how long I've been saying it for, but the trend is up. And here we are yet again this week. Fresh all-time highs in the S&P. I would buy the dip, copy and paste from everything I say every week. You know, I'd buy the dip. I think maybe it's interesting this afternoon. I mean, it's starting pretty strong off the back of these payrolls. What was yesterday's high in the S&P? Up there, 60.97. So that's the latest all-time high. Let's see if that gets taken out this afternoon. I mean, it's only it's only 5 points away, 6 points away. So pretty good chance that's going to happen. I'd be a buyer of the dip. You know, we've seen this is a 10-minute chart, but we can see since last Friday actually, this market hasn't really looked back yet again. You know, so for me, I'm absolutely a buyer of the dip in the S&P. The big trend on the dailies looks like that. What else can you say? You know, it's a market that keeps going up. I did a video this week. If you have a look, if you haven't seen it on the main channel, it's doing really well actually by my standards. But there was a video I did, all-time highs for indices, but why are most traders still losing? And if you watch the video, you'll find out why. But as I often say, you know, when I look at client sentiment, let's see if we can bring it up. Yeah, you have a market that's hitting all-time highs, and which way are people positioned? You can guarantee. Here we go. Here's an example from a popular UK broker. There we go. This is the Nasdaq, which is a market that is going up to all-time highs. 60% of client accounts are short on this market. It's because people cannot trade with the trend, you know, so they're trying to pick the top in a market that, we'll look at the Nasdaq now, you know, that continues to hit all-time highs. So, yeah, crazy. You know, it's a big reason why most people lose. But if you watch that video from this week, there's a bit more stuff in there on that, blah, blah. Okay, that's that. So S&P still going up. Nasdaq, you know, the trend is up. So again, I'd be a buyer of the dip in the Nasdaq. I came out of the trade yesterday, just above 21,400. My Nasdaq trade. I put it on the 25th of November, you know, and it did go against me for a bit, for a few days. You know, I bought it, I don't know, 28.40 or something, and it did go as low as 2,600. So it did go 200 odd points against me. But that's another reason why people lose money, because they're not patient. So you've got to be patient. So again, here we are on the Nasdaq. A strong start today. Where did it close yesterday? So it closed at 21,420. So it's up about 60 points today. Yesterday's high on the Nasdaq is again the all-time high. So that's only about 30 points away. So we'll see how that goes. But once again, on the old Nasdaq, I'd be a buyer of the dip. You know, it's pretty straightforward trading at the moment. I've started being more active in day trading indices because I've got quite a bit of time in my hands, and it's fairly easy to know where I want to do the trade. I'm not saying trading's easy, but I'm saying setting up the trade is easy. You know, going into the session, because I know where I want to buy and where I want to put my stop. So for me, it'd be nice to have a pullback this afternoon. Whether we get it, let's see what happens, or these markets just carry on blasting higher. So that's it. The big ones, S&P, Nasdaq, all still positive. I'm still long the Dow. It hasn't done a lot this week, but again, it's just below all-time highs. It's just been a bit of a boring week for the Dow. So that's that. The Russell, I thought that was interesting. The US smaller cap index. I don't look at this very often, but it's on the verge of breaking out to all-time highs. The old all-time high is from November 2021. It did have a little look through the other Monday. It's backed off a bit since then, but maybe we'll see that breakout. I don't know. Let's see what happens. But S&P and Nasdaq certainly very positive. What is also very positive is the German DAX. So the DAX had been a bit drifty from mid-October, but has started December. Again, fresh all-time highs this week in the DAX through 19.7, something like that. And you can see we've had just a week of green candles in the DAX, continues to push higher. So again, I'd be a buyer of the dip in the DAX. This is the week so far in the DAX. Nice steady moves higher. So interesting if you get a bit of a shakeout there. The French index, considering what's going on in France at the moment, I don't really know. Like most British people, I don't really care what's going on in France. But there's a bit of political unrest, isn't there, going on? So, but the stock market doesn't care. We've seen it. It's been an underperformer, the French stock market. So maybe it's been pricing in all this political nonsense. But it slipped down to August lows this week, or the last couple of weeks. Slipped near the old August lows, and we have seen it bounce. It's not really a market for me, the old French CAC 40. I think the DAX is the better market because it's trending. But, given that what's going on in France, I may have expected a bit more volatility, in the French index, and it's not really there. So, I'm long the FTSE as well. I forgot about that. I've been long the FTSE for a couple of weeks as well. It made a new high for the recovery on Tuesday. It's done the square root of not very much since then. So I've got a trailing stop on that. I bought that down here in the little recovery higher. FTSE, it's not my favourite market. If you look at the FTSE, since May of this year, it's all a bit sideways. It's had a good run since the middle of November, but we're back up to levels around about 8,400, where it's just run out of steam since August. So I don't think there's an awful lot left in that trade, but let's see. I've got a trailing stop on, so we'll see how it all works out there. So that's that. So that's indices. So broadly speaking, all positive, really, particularly the S&P and the Nasdaq continuing their push higher. Sorry, I've got a real frog in my throat this afternoon. Oh, am I going to make it to the end of the week? So what else? What else should we look at? Let's look at the dollar index. I was long the dollar index. I've been stopped out on this payrolls move. To be honest, the trade was never really going the right way from the start. I put the trade on last week, about 106.90. And it just continued to edge lower and edge backwards. Let me turn my mic off and have a good... Oh, right, how's that? So, I think this is interesting going into next week. Do we see the dollar index stage a recovery and a run out to the highs around at 108, which were 2-year highs? Or do we see further decline in the dollar index? I don't know. I was long, I'm not anymore. Interesting to see where it finishes today. I think if it slips back to those payroll lows, I think the risk is it could be under a bit more pressure next week, which has implications, of course, for the likes of the pound, for example. Pound against the dollar. The pound, if you look on the dailies, it hit 134 in September, slid as low as 125 in November, so a 900-point fall. And has bounced back since then. Are we going to see a recovery from the pound from here? So I think that's an interesting one to watch next week. So for me, I could be tempted to be a buyer of the pounds next week on a bit of weakness. Let's see what happens and where it all ends today. If I was a buyer of the pound next week, I would want to have my stop below 126. The market's only 127.60. at the moment. So if I was buying the dip, that's where I think about having a stop. And if this thing is going to run all the way back, there's potentially 700 points, 600, 700 points in that trade. Early days. Let's see. Let's see what happens. But the same for the euro as well. I don't think the euro has bounced back quite as strongly. But the euro, down here, 22nd of November, traded to its worst levels in 2 years, since November 22. So I think they're interesting to watch next week. The old pound and the euro against the dollar. So that's that. What else? Should we do Bitcoin? Through 100k. Got to be a buyer of the dip, really. It did sell off quite hard, didn't it, yesterday? I'm not quite sure what caused that, but whatever. But in the short term, I think 90,000 for me is the big level for Bitcoin. So if I was a buyer, I'd want stops the other side of 90,000 in Bitcoin. But the trend is absolutely up. I'd much rather buy a deeper dip than what we've seen so far. But let's see. I wonder if 100 grand or thereabouts perhaps ends up being a bit of a barrier because it's a big psychological level. Who knows? Let's see. Let's see what happens with Bitcoin. So I think a bit to watch in all those markets next week. Gold has been a little bit boring, I think, this week. There we go. We can see gold since actually a week last Tuesday has not done very much at all on the daily chart. So not a lot of excitement there for me. But the trend is absolutely up. So I'd absolutely, if I had to do anything on gold, I'd be a buyer of the dip. You know, we've got big support at 24.70 for me. So while it's above there, that's all okay, I think. Silver, I bought silver last week in the live stream somewhere. Actually, if I click on there, I can see it. Here we go. So the trade last week in silver, where was it? Was it here? Oh, here. So I bought it here. Sold off a bit on Monday. It's moved a bit higher this week. Let's see. Stop losses down there. Let's flip it back to a daily. Overall, the trend is up on silver. It's a bit of a funny market, I think. It sort of has these sudden moves and does nothing. But, the trend is up. And if we saw the dollar under pressure, that would only be good for the price of silver. So that's that. Oil has been really boring. I put it in the WhatsApp group. I run a WhatsApp group, and I put it in the WhatsApp group this week. I'd have been a seller on that bounce. We had that strong move on Tuesday. It carried on a little bit into Wednesday. Then completely just dumped since then. And here we are again on oil, back at these are big levels on oil. 60, whatever it is, 64 to 67 are historically big support on oil, but it's not really rallying away from it, is it? It's just all a bit boring, oil. So I don't know. I haven't traded that one for a while, but interesting to see. Do we get the bounce again or next week, or do we finally see it break down? I think the S&P has moved out to fresh all-time highs on the S&P. History being made, even as we watch it now. History's being made. So yet again, those majority of people who are short the indices are getting a little bit toasted. Oh, look at that NASDAQ. Oh, it's a shame I got stopped out of that yesterday. Profit's a profit, but I hope I get a chance to buy these back later on. Let's see. Is the Dow moving finally? The Dow is still not that movie, is it? Anyway, there we go. New all-time highs once again in these US markets. What was I talking about? Oil. Talk about oil. A little bit boring. Natural gas. Interesting. I think that once again these old highs from earlier in the year, 345, 350 on natural gas, have been a problem again. They just can't get through. It's backed off. It's slid away. In the great scheme of things, the price of natural gas has been sideways this year. So, nothing really for me. But, a good downtrend since it struggled. This is why I always find natural gas a bit tricky, because it turns around so quickly. Runs up and then boom, the trend just starts going the other way. But that still looks to me to be under a bit of pressure. Anyway, natural gas. And I think that's it, isn't it? What else is interesting? A few other bits that are interesting. Coffee. All-time highs on coffee the other week. There we go. On Friday. Backed off a bit this week. And we've had the rally again. The bounce back. Sorry, backed off at the beginning of the week, and we've had a rally the last few days. That's still a strong market. Orange juice, which has made a few attempts to break out this year. Is this the real breakout now? I don't know. But a great trend over the years on orange juice and cocoa. Cocoa, has been, again, a great run beginning of this year. The price of cocoa went from 42 to 12,000, 4,200 to 12,000, whatever that is. So almost tripled. All a bit sideways since then. Is this the start of the next big move higher in cocoa? Because it's winter and we're all going to buy hot chocolate, clearly. But some interesting moves going on in non-financial markets. But that's it. So for me next week, we'll have a look at the stuff you want looking at now. It's the same old, same old. Indices, I will be a buyer of the dip, assuming I get the opportunity. And the likes of pound against the dollar and euro against the dollar. Given the dollar weakness today, are we going to see a turnaround in the fortunes for these markets next week? Let's see. But they're probably the most interesting ones for me. So what we'll do now, we'll have a look at the stuff you want looking at. A quick commercial break from me. We'll skip past the WhatsApp group this week. We'll skip past that as well. I run these webinars. I've got a WhatsApp group. Go to the website. You can find out more details about it. I also work with a broker. I've worked with them for 2 years now. I've got absolutely no hesitation in referring them. And it's the one I use in the live streams on this YouTube thing. If you want to come to the next webinar I'm doing for the WhatsApp group, you just need to sign up with the broker, which of course is free. If you go to bit.ly/David Trade, drop me an email when you've done that. Because of GDPR, I don't know that you've signed up. Drop me an email and I'll make sure you're on the invite list for the next webinar I do, which obviously doesn't go on YouTube, and that will be, if not next week, the week after. Probably the week after. I don't know. That's Christmas the week after, isn't it? Whenever. Sign up to the broker, let me know you've done it, and I'll make sure you're on that exclusive webinar list. Right, that's it. Let's all the descriptions as usual, links in the description. Let's take a look at the stuff you want looking at. Lind, L-I-N-D-E. Lin, L-I-N. That's the one, isn't it? That's the doodah. So NASDAQ stock, I would be a buyer. Yeah, and that's it. Let's have a look at this. So the trend is up, isn't it? Looks something like that, maybe. I mean, I wouldn't say that's falling out of the trends just yet. I wouldn't worry. The fact it's broken the trend line. It did hit fresh all-time highs in there in October. So I would be a buyer. And I would probably want my stop. If I was a buyer today at 449, I'd want my stop at least the other side of 440. But to give it a bit more wiggle room, I'd probably go the other side of 430. So I'd be a buyer. That's what I would do. Should we do that? Should we actually do that? Can I do that? I don't know if I've set it up. I haven't set it up in this account. No, okay, we'll do something else. So Lind, I think that's an interesting one, that. Lind. So yeah, I would be a buyer of that one. And looking to see, really, is it going to have a run back to the old highs up there at 490-ish? So I think that's a good one. Porch Group, PRCH, Porch Group. Oh, this is too nuts for me. I'll tell you that for nothing. What do? Are they some sort of crazy crypto nonsense? Porch Group. Let's have a look. What do Porch Group do? Oh, software. Fair enough. Porch Group is a software company. But, I hate these little stocks, and I hate these stocks that triple overnight. Okay, B2B and blah, blah, blah. So for me, it's since the end of October, it's gone from 150 to 550. So it's tripled. Where would your stop go, or where would my stop go? Don't know. I mean, I'd be a buyer. If I had to do anything, I'd be a buyer because the trend is up. But, I would want a stop probably at 250, which is half, isn't it? And a bit more from where it is now. So great trend, very gappy. Not one for me, but I would be a buyer. But just a bit too crazy for me. Palantir is my biggest winner so far. Can we have a look at IONQ? IONQ. IONQ, like that one. Another crazy mover though, isn't it? What does that business do? IONQ, electronic technology and blah. Okay, quantum computing. Trapped ion quantum computing. That is a phrase I've never heard, but apparently the future is quantum. So who am I to argue with that? Yeah, to me, again, it's a big move, but also we did have a big move back here, didn't we? Almost a similar move, and it just absolutely dumped at the end of it. The problem I have with these, you know, I'm not a just jump on it and hope for the best, is where does your stop go? And I'd probably want my stop down at $20, which again is a big old stop. So the trend is up, blah, blah, blah. It's a bit too nuts for me. Let's see what happens. If it breaks through $38, then perhaps that's another buy into the strength for me with a tighter stop, but it's all a bit too nuts for me. This one. QUBT, quantum computing. Oh, we're not just going to get... Where are all these... Can we not have some sensible stocks? Don't have these crazy triple when you blink stocks. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's, again, risk control, isn't it? Risk. Where's your stop going to go? Where's my stop going to go? You know, my stop would probably, again, have to be 50% away. So, blah to that one, I'm afraid. LUNR. What's LUNR? Intuitive Machines. Oh, that looks... Oh, dear. What happened there? 134. God, that got absolutely clobbered, didn't it? Again, I mean, it's another big mover, isn't it? Because it has quintupled at its best point. So again, I hate these sort of stocks. You know, I know these sort of stocks always appeal because you get these crazy moves. But, you know, just this week, it's gone from 17 down to 11. You know, these are, it's like penny stocks in the UK, isn't it? Or an AIM stock. So if I was a buyer, I'd have a stop below 10, you know, but it's a bit too nuts for me, to be honest. YMM. Full Truck Alliance Company. That's a funny old thing, isn't it? What does that do? Full Truck Alliance. We'll find out they run like ice cream shops or something, won't we? What do they do? Full Truck Alliance. Connect shippers with truckers to facilitate shipments across distance, blah, blah, blah. So it's like a software thing for truckers. That's interesting. This is a bit calmer, this one. This is what I like, a bit more calmness. I mean, we've had... I think what's interesting here, you know, they've gone nowhere since March 22, you know, so 2 years of sideways, and they've just started breaking out, which to me is always interesting. When they start breaking out. So for me, it's we're only a few days into the breakout. I'd be a buyer. I'd rather buy a dip though. So for me, that would be one to watch, that would. And the sort of thing I would look for if I use my incredible artistic skills is that sort of a move and then that. And then, so a pullback and then a bounce. So that for me is one to watch on the old buy the dipper. I can never delete these things when I'm drawing them. Hang on a second. All right, it's going to stay there forever. Oh, there we go. It's gone. So that's interesting. Can we look at JD and AMAT? JD is jd.com on the old, I'm guessing it's that one. It's an interesting one, that, isn't it? I think it's a bit of a confusing one, that, I think. Because you could make the argument the downtrend is still in place and this is just a bit of an aberration before it drops again. Or you could also take the view, the downtrend is over and I want to buy the dip. So I don't know. I don't know where I'd be on that. I think I would probably I'd be more inclined to buy the dip. Yeah, so for me that would be a buy the dip. So as usual, the question is, where does my stop go? So I'll be a buyer of the dip. So I'm going to take the view on JD that this downtrend that it had been in since 2021 is over. and it's on the road to recovery. Happy days. So I want to be a buyer. Let's do this. Actually, we haven't done anything, so let's buy this, shall we? So the closest I'd want my stop is the other side of 32. Let's say I go 30. So I'm going to buy it. Let's buy it. Oh, I can't trade. Oh, have I not set it up? Oh, hang on a second. JD. Oh, there we go. That's it. Okay. So I'm going to buy it, and I'm going to put a stop. I think 32 is a good area because it's blipped its way up. It's come back. Again, it's pretty volatile though, isn't it? It's quite a... What do they do? It's not JD Sports, is it? What does JD.com do? It can't be, can it? If it's a US listing. Oh, I was thinking about it. My internet doesn't like JD US company. What do they do? Largest retailer in China. Okay, that's what they do. Fair enough. Oh yeah, got it. Oh yes, I've got JD.com. That's the website I got. Good job I didn't wait for the website because I'd have made no sense of that. Okay, so Chinese retailer. So I want to be a buyer. Put a stop at. That's pretty. What's it done? September went from 26 to 48, so it didn't quite double. Let's go 30. Go 29. 29 on JD. Okay, stop loss. In at 29. Okay, we'll just buy 0.1 of them. So my risk is about 87 quid. I quite like that. That's quite interesting. Let's put that in and see how that works out. So we bought those just really to see if that is a trend reversal. But interesting. A bit like Alibaba, isn't it, in the past? That was the move in Alibaba, which hasn't done much since then. Downtrend, rallies, and then it all goes a bit sideways since then. But interesting to see how this JD.com thing turns out. Let's see what happens with that one. Amat is applied something in materials, isn't it? That's it. Amat. I've traded this one in the past. I mean, I would be a buyer, just not yet, I think. I wouldn't be in a hurry to buy it. I would be a buyer. I think I absolutely have traded it this year on the way up, and it's just gone a bit driftorama, hasn't it? So for me, I would keep an eye on it, but it's just gone a little bit gappy and just drifty. So yeah, if I was a buyer today, I'd put a stop at 140 if I was a buyer today, but I don't really feel any compulsion at the moment to buy it. There's what's the one? There's a stock I'm still in, Bank of New York. So, when there are stocks that are doing that, for example, where there are trends, and there are quite a few still. Boston Scientific is another one I was in earlier this year, and that's just cracking trend. So for me, with Amat, Applied Materials, I wouldn't be in a hurry just yet on that. BBWI, what's that then? Bath and Body Works International. I mean, yeah. I mean, if you thought, again, it's all a bit sideways, isn't it? You think stock markets are blowing the roof off. Bath and Body Works is just trading sideways, isn't it? So again, for me, I'd rather be a buyer than a seller, but it's a little bit halfway up the range, so it's not too exciting to me. And PDD Holdings. Again, it's not really done much this year, is it? If I had to do anything, I'd be a buyer. It's at the bottom of the range. Put a stop the other side of 87 and see what happens next. But yeah, it's not exactly trending, is it? I would say Energex Renewable Energy so it trades on the Toronto and the German. Let's see where we've got the most. I mean that is one since 2021. All it's done is go down, isn't it? I mean, you could, I suppose, if you thought, well, are we near the bottom? If I was a buyer today, I would put my stop the other side of $7, 7 Canadian dollars. But that is, look at the story of the trend there, and maybe we've seen the worst. It's still weak today, isn't it? So yeah, but no, it's not one for me, that, because it just can't hold on to any recoveries, can it? It just gets slammed, doesn't it? Into it. What are they doing at the moment? Into it. They used to be quite good. Yeah, I would. Would you buy those? I went short those. I got stopped out. I went short those at some point. I think in June. But I mean, they are trying to break out, aren't they? But they're not, are they? They can't get through this old one. It's another one, isn't it? You've got the stock market blowing the roof off it, and into it is trading where it was in February. Yeah. So again, if I was a buyer, I put a stop the other side of $600, but you just can't really. It's more interesting to me if it manages to break out to fresh all-time highs through 720. Then I think it's more interesting. At the moment, it's just a bit too sideways. I think that is Bidu, B-I-D-U. It's boring, isn't it? It's just, again, it's a bit sideways, isn't it? I mean, again, you could absolutely take the view, okay, we're back to the 12-month low on Beidou. So let's be a buyer and put a stop the other side of 75. But again, I think it is important to remember what the stock market as a whole is doing. We're at all-time highs. So if we've got stocks that have been sliding for the last couple of years, there's clearly something wrong. And the risk is, if the market turns, they're going to get hit even harder, I would suggest. So I'd much rather buy strong performers in a strong market, or just buy the index. So yeah, but for Beidou, maybe we'll see a bounce down here, but yeah, it's not one for me. On CRISP, CRSP, CRISPR Therapeutics. Again, it's all a bit sideways, isn't it? It's another one, I think, where if you thought, is there going to be a turnaround, then there's an argument to be a buyer with a stop, maybe the other side of 44 or a stop the other side of 37. But again, it's trading, broadly speaking, where it was 2.5 years ago. And what's the Nasdaq, the S&P's up 30% in the last year, and a lot of these stocks that are sideways. So just, why aren't they going up? Why aren't they going up? It's a great mystery of our time. So yeah, not one for me, but clearly, going back to 2023, sort of $40 or thereabouts as being a floor. So maybe if I was a buyer, stops beyond there. Can we have a look at DDOG? DDOG, I hope you're going to sign up for the broker after sending in all these things, all these stocks. Yes, I would be a buyer on that. Interesting that it's broken out, isn't it? This is the problem though, isn't it, that I have. Where does my stop go? 138 is the high, and here we are at 166, no pullback. So I would have seen the breakout, thought, oh, this is good, let's wait for the pullback, and the pullback never happens. So I'd absolutely be a buyer. I'd rather buy a pullback. So for me, I would like to have a stop below 120, where it was just before the breakout, but it needs to pull back. And the risk is, if it doesn't pull back, then I miss out, don't I? So, but no, that's been good, isn't it? That one. Which one was that? Datadog and pins. What's pins? Pins. Pinterest. Oh, well, I've got no idea if that's going to be good or bad. What do we think? Well, the likes of Meta have done okay. Let's have a look. Oh, it's a bit boring, isn't it? Okay. It's a bit boring. I'd probably be a buyer than a seller. We did have a little uptrend that was going, and it all has gone a bit wrong. So if I was a buyer, I'd have a stop perhaps the other side of $28. But it's a bit, again, this year you'd have been better off just putting your money in an S&P exchange traded fund, wouldn't you, rather than buying Pinterest. So yeah, that's it. Oh, S&P about to go through the magical 6100. Not that there's anything relevant. 6100. Oh, it's been through it already. Talking rubbish. All right, so we've had an all-time high on the S&P. Is that Nasdaq still going? Yeah, that's all positive, isn't it? Is the Dow moving? The Dow's not moving. It's quite interesting, you're definitely seeing some differences as to how, the indices move, and we have days where the S&P and the Nasdaq not for a while, but take a bit of a hit, and the Dow does well. The Dow obviously is more conservative, 30 stocks, more perhaps traditional, old school industry names, whereas the S&P, and of course particularly the Nasdaq, is much more the go-getters. But Nasdaq and S&P having a good day today. What's the? Let's have a look at the pound. See what that's doing. That's selling off a bit. I do think that would be interesting for next week. Pound against the dollar. See what happens. Otherwise, we're done, aren't we? So let's see. Let's see what happens next week. So I will be back next Friday. Try out the broker, and you'll get. I'll send you the link to the recording I did for the WhatsApp group 2 weeks ago, and I'll make sure you're on the list for the next one in the next couple of weeks. bit.ly/David Trade. The reason I like them, you can see it's easy to trade off the charts. You can trade small. You don't need to take on, big levels of risk. I can try. So if I traded pound against the dollar with a 100-point stop loss, where is it now? 1.2650. I can trade, so I'm only risking £9, about $12. So I don't need to take loads of risks. Let's do a trade on that. I'm going to preempt myself, and I'm going to say we are going to see a recovery next week. So let's go stops under 126. So let's go 1.2580 pound against the dollar. Let's risk about 50 quid or so. That'll do. There we go. And that will focus my mind a bit next week. There we go. I think that's an interesting market next week to see if we continue a recovery off the old doodah for the pound against the dollar. So yeah, but I like the broking. Trade through the charts. I can keep an eye on my P&L while I'm looking at TradingView. All the details are in there. Tight spreads, regulated in the UK or wherever you are. So give them a go and try them out, and I'll make sure you're on the link for the next sessions I do. Right, that's it. We're going to wrap it up there. It is, 45 minutes. That's all right, isn't it? Any questions, you can always drop me an email, dj@davidjonestrading.co.uk. If you didn't see that video on indices this week, it might be worth a watch just to see why people continue to lose, and it will never change. But, I think if we can look at why people lose, it can help us with our own trading. Otherwise, we'll do it all next Friday. I'll try and knock out a video halfway through next week. If there's something interesting going on, maybe this pound against the dollar thing, maybe that would be interesting. But otherwise, have a good weekend. Good luck with your trading. And thanks for coming along today, and see you same time next week.